Hello, my name is Julie, and it's time to do the end of year TBR tag. I cannot believe September is almost over. It is time to break out the fall decorations. I am so excited for it to get cool again. But that means that I am almost out of time in what books I can read in 2025, which is stressing me out a little bit. So I thought I would take you through the end of year TBR tag and we can find out what I have coming up for the rest of the year. I do feel like I don't have as strict plans as I normally do. There are a lot of floaters that I want to get to before the end of the year. So I'm gonna run through the tag and then I'll run you through what I'm doing for the buzzword and buzz cover challenges. So the first question is, are there any books that you have not finished yet this year that you want to finish? I don't pause books and pick them back up, but there is one book that I'm reading a little bit of at a time right now, and that is Pride and Prejudice, because this is a reread. So whenever I have had a little bit extra time in the day, I sit down and read a chapter or two of this, and I don't believe I'm going to finish this in September, although the earlier the better, because I have a different book that I'm planning on kind of doing the same thing to, and I'd like to get to it as soon as possible because it is a long one. But I am absolutely having a blast with my reread. I have reread parts of it and I've seen the adaptations a million times, but I have never actually reread it in its entirety since I read it the first time when I was in 7th grade. And that was not half my lifetime ago. It's a joy to be back. It's really interesting how my perception of the story has been warped by the adaptations and how there are things that I don't remember playing out exactly the way that they do in the book, particularly when Austen just decides to use implicit dialogue where she just says what a character says instead of giving them their actual line. But yeah, I'm having a great time. The second question is, are you on track for your reading goal for the year? And the answer is yes. I just completed my 100th book of the year. That was Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. And I have set my Goodreads goal at 100 books for the last several years because it's a goal that to me is attainable, but it allows me, if something goes very wrong, I still think I can hit it. But I do have a lot of other challenges that I do throughout the year, so let's check on my progress. I have a 20 in 2025 TBR, and there are only 3 books that I have not read yet. One of them has not come out yet, that is The Strength of the Few. The Strength of the Few is the sequel to The Will of the Many. I'm actually currently rereading The Will of the Many, which this is news to everybody because I never reread books. I usually only reread one book a year, and I'm already rereading Pride and Prejudice, but I really wanted to get everything down for The Strength of the Few. This is a Roman-inspired fantasy series about our main character Vis, who used to be the prince of a kingdom that was conquered by this empire, where people cede their will, which is kind of like your soul or your spirit, partially to the people above you in the hierarchy. And I cannot wait for new stuff after what happened at the end of Will of Many. One of them I have not been able to get my hands on yet because I've been trying to get it from the library and failing desperately, and that is Catabasis. This is about 2 students at Oxford whose professor is sucked into hell, sent to hell, I'm not sure. The 2 of them are trying to go down there and save him. I have heard this is very literary and very scholarly. It does make me excited, but I have heard pretty mixed reviews, so that's why I was waiting for the library. For some reason, the 2 closest library systems to me do not have it in stock at all. I really hope it is a supply issue, and after I called my library, it did seem to be that way. They're not even ordering audiobook copies despite this being one of the most popular books of the year. So I am currently on hold at a different library, but if I can't get it in time for when I want to read it, I'll just buy it because I do trust this author. And the last book that I have left on my 20 in 2025 is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Oh my god, this is insane. This is the oldest book on my TBR. I have owned this book since I think 2014. So it's been going on 11 years since I got this book. It is almost 1,500 pages long. And I am planning on reading maybe 25 or so pages at a time and reading a bunch of other books while I'm reading this so I can focus on getting something out of this book rather than focusing on getting through it. And I am going to try to get an audiobook copy from my library so I can read both at the same time and try to maximize comprehension, immersion, whatever. But this is, of course, the book that inspired the Broadway show, which I'm a big fan of, and this is taking place during the French Revolution and following a bunch of revolutionaries. I have had multiple people comment and say that this is like one of their favorite books of all time, so I'm very excited to finally get to this. I am anticipating I'm really really gonna like it. Then for my 12 Friends, 12 Books, 12 Months challenge, I have just finished this the other day. I had actually finished the 11th book in July and then was just waiting on getting around to finishing that 12th book. So I finished the 12 Months challenge mostly within the span of 6 months. And I overall was recommended a lot of good stuff and some stuff that I wasn't going to pick up by myself. So thank you to everyone who suggests this stuff to me. Then we have all of my monthly challenge, the buzzword, the buzz cover, and my bingo page count countdown. All 3 of those challenges I am caught up on. Then question number 3, finally. Do you have any autumnal books that you are hoping to read to get you in the mood for the fall season? And I've kind of read a couple of autumnal books already. I think Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil is very autumnal. But I am hoping, I just put on hold at my library Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I read The Hacienda, I think 2 years ago, and I really enjoyed it. I'm not usually a haunted house person, and the author made me really invested in it. So this is taking place during the Mexican-American War. Our main characters are Nana and Nestor, and they grew up together. They were attached to the hip, and something happened that made Nestor believe Nana was dead. They have been separated ever since, and she thinks he betrayed her. Americans are coming to attack their area. They find each other again, but not only is this conflict happening, there also is, of course, vampires. I really enjoyed how the supernatural elements were tied into the other parts of the story in The Hacienda. I have heard that this one is a little bit more romance focused than The Hacienda was, which makes me a little bit nervous. And also vampires aren't always my thing. But again, this worked for me. I think vampire stories that are very clearly trying to use the vampires as a metaphor are more my thing rather than the paranormal romance line of thinking, if that makes sense. This just seems like it's gonna give me a really good fall vibe that I'm super excited for. The next question is a new release that you're still waiting on. I've already mentioned The Strength of the Few. Other than that, I'll talk about Brigands and Bread Knives by Travis Baldry. This is the 3rd book in the Legends and Lattes series. This is not going to be from the point of view of Viv, who has been our main character for the last 2 books. This is actually from the point of view of Fern, who is the ratkin who runs the bookshop in Bookshops and Bone Dust. Fern has found out that Viv has opened up her coffee shop, and so she is deciding to leave her small town behind and move to where Viv is. I think she's like in with a group of adventurers. She's at least on the road, so I think there is actually going to be a little bit more action or danger in this one than there have been in the previous ones, which makes me intrigued. Then I decided to add a question, and that is, what is a new release that already came out this year that you haven't gotten a chance to get around to? And for that, I'm going to be picking The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. This is the 2nd book in the Spellshop companion series. This is such a pleasing color combination to me. I love it so much. The Spellshop is my favorite cozy fantasy of all time. It was one of my favorite books of last year, and this is a companion that is about a character who was briefly mentioned in the 1st book. Our main character got in trouble with the Empire for doing something innocuous and was punished by being turned into a statue. And one day she wakes up, no longer a statue, on this island that is wintry with greenhouses all over it, and she's like, how did I get here? I really enjoyed how the Spell Shop combined having a anti-imperialist plot with being cozy, because I think it really shows how the way to fight back is community. Then our next question, are there any books that you think could shock you and become a new favorite of the year? Which I do think this question is an oxymoron, because if I anticipate it, how am I going to be shocked? But maybe it's more of like, it's going to upset the rankings of your favorite books of the year already. The book that I know for sure I'm going to read that is not a sequel that I think could be a new favorite is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. This is a new fantasy series from him. It's actually fantasy horror, which makes me so excited because that has been a crossover that I have really enjoyed lately. All of Joe Abercrombie's other books, to my knowledge, take place within one universe, and I have not had the courage to jump in yet because it's so intimidating to have so many books there, and I am in the middle of so many series already. So I thought I would try a series that I'd be caught up on. But this is about our main character, who is a priest who is assigned to preside over this group of criminals. The synopsis is very vague. That's basically all I know. I've seen pretty freaking good reviews for this one, and I am just really hoping that this is going to both scratch the like Halloween scary itch and the need for new fantasy series. Then our second to last question is name 3 books that you want to read before the end of the year. So I've already done plenty of those, but some that I know I'm going to that haven't gotten out there. I would really like to get to Abaddon's Gate. This is the only owned physical sequel that I had at the beginning of the year that I still haven't read yet. This is the 3rd book in the Expanse series, which is a space opera series. Our main characters are part of this small ship that witnessed basically a war crime happen, and there is war brewing between different forces in our solar system, as there are people in the inner planets are kind of forming an alliance and the people in the outer planets are kind of forming an alliance. And I have really enjoyed both of the first books in this series, and it's been a while. I have been partially holding off on this because I have been collecting these 10th anniversary editions, and they have not announced that books 4 and 5 are coming out anytime soon in these editions. And because this is a finished series, I haven't necessarily been rushing to get to it, but I don't know when I'm going to get to this. I'm anticipating this is going to end up being a December read for me. Then for a vlog, I am going to be reading The Stars Undying by Emery Robin. This is the first book in a duology, which I know I shouldn't be starting series, but I don't have a choice, okay? It's for the vlog, and I didn't get to choose what was in that vlog. It is a space opera duology that is inspired by Antony Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. And I do believe it is the real history, not just the Shakespeare show. I have heard nobody talking about this book. It does not have a large readership. It does not have a high average rating, but this book has felt like it could be up my alley. I have not seen any of the critiques for this book, so I'm hoping to go in with an open mind and maybe find an underrated gem that people haven't been giving due credit. Also, Casey McQuiston and Everina Maxwell blurbed this. Interesting. This is one of those ones that I got like on discount, and that's why I bought it, even though it wasn't one that I was prioritizing. And I have stopped myself from doing that, so I no longer have an overinflated TBR. And the last book that I'm hoping to read before the end of the year, I'm hoping to read Wicked by Gregory Maguire. I am a big fan of the Broadway show and of course the movie that just recently came out. I have never read the book. I know that it is very, very different from the show, and I have read how it is different, and that makes me very intrigued. This is a very politically charged book, and it is not nearly as fun as the show is, but I am so excited to see the source material, and I'd really like to read that before the new movie comes out at the end of November. I don't know if I'm going to have time to do that. I'm thinking about doing a vlog of just reading this and talking about it in conjunction with the show, and maybe doing a mini review of the movies. I don't actually know that I have time in my schedule to do that, so if you are interested in me doing that, please let me know, or else I will just read this on my own. The last question of the tag before I get into my other stuff is, have you made any reading plans for next year? I don't have any set plans for like books that aren't out that I want to read in 2026, but there are a bunch of 2026 releases that I know for sure that I want to get to. I have lots of series that have sequels coming out. The Nam Peshawayasit series with To Ride a Rising Storm, that's going to come out in January. The Fox in Winter, which is the sequel to The Raven Scholar, is going to come out sometime. And the Bridge Kingdom series is finally going to be concluding with The Tempest Blade. I did not love book 5. I did not think it was close to the quality of the rest of this series, but the ending of that book was so wild that I am excited to finish this out. It's kind of the only fantasy romance series that I'm even remotely interested in right now, hoping it ends out well. There's a couple books that I'm super duper excited for that aren't sequels. Sara Al-Arifi has a book called Cleopatra coming out. I don't know how fantasy versus historical fiction it's going to be, but I really enjoyed The Final Strife, and this is going to be a take on the life of Cleopatra. Clearly I'm interested in her. Fonda Lee has a book that is samurai businessmen in space. It's called The Last Contract of Asako, and I'm super excited for that one. I cannot believe it's been so long since I've read Fonda Lee. And an author that I've not read from before that I am highly anticipating this book is The Subtle Art of Folding Space by John Chu. This is his debut novel, but he has won awards for his short fiction. Haven't read it yet, but this cover grabbed me immediately when it was announced on, I think it was Tor. In this book, the world is collapsing. There is this thing called the Skunk Works, which is supposed to keep all of the universe universe in check and something is going wrong, and that has something to do with the main character's mother being in a coma. And I think that this is going to be a really great breakdown on like complicated grief. It seems like it's one of those books that is, you know, very metaphorically resonant. That's going to be way up my alley. Last up, I'm just going to run you through what books I'm going to be reading for the Buzzword Readathon, the Buzzcover Readathon, and my page count challenge. So for the Buzzword Readathon, the first one is Violence Words for October, and I am reading both The Devils and The Stars Undying. I want you to tell me which of those you think is the most violent. I think Undying to me, because it has the word dying in it, do either of those seem more violent related to you that I can use them for this challenge? In November, the word is never, and honestly, every book that has ever had never in the title that I have been interested in, I've already read. If you have any recommendations for me, let me know, but I think right now I'm going to be trying to read something a little bit different. It is Nonfiction November, so I'm going to try reading It's Not Hysteria, which does have the word never in the subtitle. This is a science book about the female reproductive system and talking about science that has been done that hasn't necessarily been paid attention to by the education system. I'm also assuming that this is going to be about how XX bodies aren't studied as much. Unless somebody has something that they think I'm really gonna like, this is probably going to be what I'm gonna be reading. And then in December, the challenge is to read a title that has alliteration in it, and I am going to be reading Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. This is a book that is a retelling of Jane Eyre, or it is Jane Eyre from the perspective of Bertha, or Antoinette as she is known in this book, as she is growing up in the Caribbean and then married off to this man across the sea. I've heard that this is very feminist and anti-colonial and everything. And other than that, like, I don't have any impressions about like the style or anything about this book. I am really curious to see how this is going to pair with my knowledge of Jane Eyre. Then for the Buzz cover challenge, I am going to be reading The Devils, which one of these copies does have characters with multiple weapons on it. For November, the challenge is to read books with food or drink on the cover, and so I'm going to be reading The Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, which is another sequel I need to get to, and this character right here has a mug of presumably tea. This is about our main character, Sarah, who she was one of the most powerful witches in Britain, and then she used her magic to resurrect her recently dead aunt, and she has been excommunicated from her guild. She and her ghost aunt are now running this inn, and she's trying to get her magic back, and she thinks the only person who could help her is this grumpy historian man. I really enjoyed The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. It's one of my favorite cozy fantasies, and I'm super excited to get to this. I hope this is like an easy breezy read. And in December, the challenge is to have a monochrome cover, and I'm going to be reading Model Home by River Solomon, who wrote one of my favorite books of all time, Sorrowland. This is about siblings who are returning to their house after their parents have died, and so it's a bit of a haunted house book where the haunting is the pasts of their childhood. I have heard really mixed reviews of this book. I've also given River Solomon like a 5, a 4+, and a 3+. So like this could be, I think I am going to enjoy this no matter what, even if it's not my favorite. I have heard some people say that this is brilliant, and I've heard some people say that this is like their least favorite of River Solomon's work, so wide range of where I could fall, but I absolutely have to give it a shot. Now on to the Pages Challenge. In October, I need to read a book that is from 250 to 300 pages, and for that, I am going to be reading The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. This is a book that was published, I believe, in the 1920s, maybe early 1910s, winner of the 1921 Pulitzer Prize. This is one of the works that inspired the movie Materialists, which is one of my favorite movies that I've seen this year, and I've just had this on my TBR for years and years and years, never with any intention to get to it soon. This is one of those books that I picked up at a used bookstore just for kicks and because it was a classic. This is about Archer, who is preparing to marry the beautiful but conventional May Welland, and then a mysterious Countess Olenska returns to New York after a disastrous marriage. Archer falls deeply in love with her, and he's torn between duty and passion. It's one of those, you know, classic stories about do you marry for love or duty, that sort of thing. Given that this was the source material for something I really enjoyed, I think that this is one that unexpectedly, maybe it could unexpectedly become a favorite. Oh my goodness, I should have answered it for that question. Then in November, I'm going to be reading a book that is 200 to 250 pages, so I am going to be reading Why Fish Don't Exist by Lulu Miller. Again, a nonfiction book for Nonfiction November. If you include the back matter, it is over 200 pages, but the book itself is a little bit shorter. Oops, we're doing it anyway. But this is a book about taxonomy, and I am very interested in language and anything to do with that. Etymology, particularly, is something I really care about. It is about the anecdote of how there isn't actually a scientific definition of what a fish is, and extrapolating from that. I picked this up from a little free library for my dad, and he enjoyed it and handed it back to me, so I'm going to check this one out. And then for December, we are going to be reading a book that is under 200 pages, and for that I am going to be reading White Sargasso Sea again. So that means for 2 of these months I was able to double up with my challenges, which I am pretty proud of because I have only been able to do that for a couple of months this year. But those are all the books that I know for sure I'm going to try reading in the last quarter of the year. Let me know what you are hoping to read before the year is up, and if you've read any of these, please tell me your thoughts. Tell me if I should be pushing them up or down on my TBR. But thank you so much for watching, and thank you for all the love on my last video. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to find me anywhere, you can find me at the links in the description, and if you want to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.